Good afternoon, all who stumbled across my small, obscure YouTube channel. It's not my usual greeting because this is a departure from my usual content. I wanted to give a message to my fellow progressives, to my fellow Democrats, but this mostly serves as a wake-up call to the Democratic establishment and out-of-touch baby boomers. This being 2022, we have the midterm elections this year, and it's not looking good. And more recent elections have not looked good for pretty much the same reason over the years. So, to explain the title first, Democrats, it's not 1992 anymore. In other words, you have to change. Everything you do, all your strategy and all that is off of 30-year-old intel. And then you wonder why people don't come out. You wonder why people vote third party. You wonder why people take a shot on a fake populist Republican, because we are basically told by the Democratic establishment that we must blindly fall in line behind, some neoliberal corporatist spewing 1990s platitude. America will rise again. Because that's what worked in 1992. Never mind that a lot's changed since 1992 in the world in general, in the country, and most importantly, in your voting constituents. Many of the people who, were important groups to court in 1992 have passed away. Since then, many younger generations have become of voting age, but, where are they gonna go? Fuck them. And let's focus on, as always, white middle class suburban baby boomers, moderate baby boomers, because apparently they're the greatest people that have ever existed, and once they're gone, the whole world can end because everything's been leading up to them. At least that's how some of them feel and act. It's a level of entitlement that both generations younger than them and older than them can't fathom, but they just know they're just right for reasons. That's why the term baby boomer supremacist was coined, and sadly I believe we have one in the White House now, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So as I said, to put it bluntly, it's not 1992 anymore. Establishment centrism is not popular. We have had it since the 90s. Prior to that, we had our major shift to the right with Reaganomics, or as George H.W. Bush correctly said, voodoo economic policy. I haven't done that impression in a while. It's rusty. So, since 1992, we have essentially had two choices, Reaganite or Clintonite. Both have failed the middle class. Especially, I'm from Pennsylvania, so I'm from the Rust Belt. Us, I would say, more than any other place in the country. Jobs were outsourced, taxes on the rich were slashed, deregulation galore for corporations, rules against antitrust were not enforced. The big guys keep doing better, and the middle and working class of all races are told to shut up and fall in line, and us people, Generation X and younger, are basically told to fall in line, and it doesn't matter what we want, and it's all about the boomers. So why would us and the younger generation support you? You told us for years, well, you want to change things, get involved. And then we did, ushered in Barack Obama, created things like the Justice Democrats. And instead of listening to us, you basically tell us to shut up and fall in line. And how dare we primary, out of touch incumbents. So what that says is, so the Democratic Party, specifically, in Congress. So if you are in Congress, you deserve to be there for life. So I thought we in the Democratic Party were against the Good Old Boys Club. So you go against the Good Old Boys Club by creating your own Good Old Boys Club that supports the same corporatist agenda. It's just you give a shit about social policies, and you have a more diverse network of, quote, good old boys, but they all believe in the same outdated and exploitative corporate agenda. Everybody sees right through that. And my next point I'm going to mention more than once, but it's the most important, even if you're like, who the fuck is this nobody and why is he running his mouth? Well, because I'm a nobody, I can, and, you know, nobody will listen, but I can do it. So, if you're going to disagree with me on policy and everything else, let me give you one very important fact. Nobody likes platitudes. It makes you fake. It makes you seem like you want power for power's sake, like you don't know what you're talking about, like you have nothing of substance to say, and you just feel entitled to go into office. You might as well be, if you just want to spew platitudes and, wield power for power's sake and be an authoritarian, then go try to usurp David Miscavige for the uh, the leadership position in Scientology, you know, which he will not give up willingly. Just ask Pat Broker. So, if you actually want to be a public servant, you should give a damn to what the majority of people want, instead of just telling everybody to fall in line behind the same 30-year-old failed agenda that got us into this mess in the first place. What caused the rise of Trump? Neoliberalism. I mean, Listen Liberal by Thomas Frank explains that pretty well. People much wiser in politics than I, like Tom Hartman and Kyle Kalinske, have laid that out perfectly as well, and economists like Mark Blythe, who is a Ivy League economist. But you refuse to listen and choose to act as if the only answer is more of the status quo. Am I claiming I know what the answer is? No, but I know what's broken is the status quo, and I know the answer isn't more status quo. Through the years, you've, ripped the mask off and proven just how little you give a shit about anybody except your donors and that all-important white baby boomer constituency. I mean, take 2016, for example. Uh, you pushed Hillary, okay? First woman president's a big deal and all, but Bernie would have been the first Jew, but that wasn't a big deal. But more importantly, instead of pushing Hillary to the left to court progressives and independents, literally the strategy of the Democratic leader in the Senate was, for every white working class person we lose, we will get, in like Pennsylvania, we will get pick up a moderate Republican in the suburbs, moderate Republican white baby boomers. So if that's all you care about, then go revive the moderate wing of the Republican Party, although that exists in the Democratic Party now, which was the whole point of the Democratic leadership position, which is an old and outdated and failed ideology. I know, it brought you back into power in the 90s, but, and you can argue and probably make a good case that that's what you had to do at the time. But to try to argue that everything is still the way it is, like in the Bush senior years when that was being formed and nothing has changed, that's still the world we live in, is just delusional, because a lot has changed for the worse in a lot of cases. Economically, it's gotten better socially in a lot of ways, but more of that is not the option. The only acceptable answer now is, if something's not working, don't change it. Double, triple down on it. Cram it down their throat. Make it be the voters' fault that we lost. Well, maybe the voters don't care. It's like, neoconservative or neoliberal. I'm screwed either way. I don't care. And, the neocons, even though they're worse, they're at least more honest about what they're for. Tax cuts for the rich, breaks for corporations, the military-industrial complex. The neoliberals try to lie and say that they care and talk about compromise, that we can't have the nice things that we want that every other Western industrialized country has, like healthcare. But let's talk about compromise, because the lecture that I've heard is, well, you have to compromise in life, and that is true. But you refuse to even do that. You don't offer us compromises. You offer us platitudes and more of the status quo. I'll explain. So, for example, over, I think, 70% of the country wants universal health care, as opposed to the corporatist program we have now that, it's called Obamacare, but it was created by the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing think tank, and it was implemented at the state level in Massachusetts by Mitt Romney. It was also part of Bob Dole's 1996 platform. But nevertheless, the individual mandates a corporatist system. There's nothing socialist about it. It forces you to spend money on a private system. So, more money. So, what's the compromise between our status quo, that, and universal health care. Well, that would be a public option, which even with supermajority we're not allowed to have, because it would be a break from your holy, sacred corporate status quo that your donors oh so love because they're raking it in, they're making the money. And, that would be a reasonable compromise because it would give people the option to buy into a program like Medicare, a system that exists to provide health care instead of make a profit, which would thus have more competition and thus most likely, because I don't know, it's never been tried, you don't know either, would drive down the cost of private insurance because they would have to compete with Medicare. And for those people that are like, I don't want no government health care, well, you want freedom of choice, so you would, under a public option, you would have the freedom to buy from the private market, but the person who wants public can have the freedom to buy from the public market. Isn't that a reasonable compromise? But we can't have that because the good old boys will lose money, and we can't have that. They must, especially the baby boomer good old boys, must, be touted as kings until the day they pass away. So, and college, another point of college. It's after you, this is a nice move by the neoliberal boomers. So after you outsource the vast majority of the good paying union jobs that only required a high school education, and you got the public sector, which, good paying jobs didn't require a lot of education, that goes away. The era of big government is over. I'm a Democrat. Yeah, that philosophy. So, Ronald Reagan light, which we then exported to the UK because Tony Blair thought it was the greatest thing ever. And even Margaret Thatcher said her greatest accomplishment was the new Labour Party, which is you destroy, like the DLC did, destroyed the real opposition to the Republican agenda and just water it down. But I'm getting off on a tangent, and we're going to go back to college. So, college. Why? Let me be clear here, and I'm talking specifically about the cost of tuition at in-state state universities for state residents. Like, for example, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm talking about the cost of, say, what it cost me in the 2000s to attend Penn State as a state student. And this is something that's been going on since Gen X. So we'll start around 1990 just to cause a point. So why did I have to pay triple, adjusted for inflation, to go to Penn State as my father did? To spell it out for you, he was an in-state Penn State student in the late 70s, and he kept documents. So I know what he paid in 1978 as opposed to what I paid in 2009. Why was my bill triple his? And this is after I adjusted his 1978 dollars to 2009 dollars. How's that fair, baby boomers? I understand that you talk about, free college and gimmies. Well, why did you get it for a third price? What the fuck did you do to deserve that? But that's just for you, because, we only exist to serve you. And that's why you created for-profit universities and all these student loans, so you guys could stuff your fucking pockets even fuller and exploit us, and thus drive more people to go to college and get useless degrees because they can't go into the factory because you outsourced them. So I'm not even talking about places like Harvard and Yale. The private universities can charge what they want, but I think Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z deserve an explanation as to why college became so much more expensive by the baby boomers once their generation was no longer the students and were now the people in charge. And how is that fair? But then again, our current baby boomer supremacist president, who we're told is so great because he's not Trump. Yeah, could you set that bar any lower? You know, has said and has never apologized or explained it, quote, "Give me a break. I have no empathy for younger generations. No, 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 give me a break." Guess what? I ain't ever voting for him. I didn't last time. And I've volunteered for every Democratic candidate since 2004 with John Kerry. And I spent countless hours for Barack Obama in 2008. And I was instrumental in my area of helping Bob Casey oust Rick Santorum in 2006. But I will not, under any circumstances, ever vote for a baby boomer supremacist. Why is it in our culture? And yeah, we have problems of racism and sexism in this culture. And we're making strides in ending the superiority of I'm better because I'm male or I'm better because I'm white. But the one we seem to ignore and still seems to be acceptable is I'm better than you because I was born in 1947. So why is that any different? You tell me why somebody is automatically superior because they were born between the years of approximately 1946 and 1964, and why the opportunity that they were afforded by their parents who paid a heavy price in blood in the Second World War to create the greatest economic system that ever existed, the golden age of economic opportunity, yet the generation who gave that away in the 80s and 90s for a few tax cuts so they could, live the yuppie life, are now telling us we're the entitled ones after they looted everything for themselves. And now in their old age, after being in power since the 80s, refuse to surrender the helm because the idea of anything changing is, no, we can't do that, And I'm not talking about if us people in the younger generations were like, hey, let's gut Medicare and Social Security. Yeah, damn right, every 70 something should be jumping up and down and saying no. But for things that don't concern them, why is it so important for them to prevent any change? They've more than had their time at the helm. But no, they must dominate until they die. Well, people are sick of it, and we're not going to fall in line anymore. You can't guilt us. We don't care. In the age of new media, we can get the truth or something closer to it, and we aren't going to listen to the propaganda on Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. And we see how the agenda is. You just push the good old boys. I'll use Biden as an example again. So, you slandered Bernie Sanders in 2016, who had the support of the youth, and said, old white man, old white man, old white man, Hillary's female. True enough. But then in 2020, you said, Bernie, old white man, old white man. Biden, 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 who's an old white man, part of the establishment, has a bit of a shady past, and is in the club. But there was no mention about, well, Bernie in 2020, that would have been our first Jewish president. That's a milestone. That was swept under the rug. There was nothing, new about Joe Biden. It's like, ooh, just status quo, Bill Clinton 3.0. Yay, status quo. So you push that on us, and we were just told to fall in line. And I understand, a lot of celebrities and important people said, well, how can anybody, with a conscience vote for Trump over Biden? Fair enough, I get that. I didn't vote for Trump in either election. But I have a question for you. How can anybody, given all the choices we have chosen status quo Joe in the primary? How does that happen? And why is it always that the progressives have to fall in line behind the neoliberals? Why can't they fall in line just for once? Because it's never happened in my lifetime. And the only argument I ever get is, McGovern, 72. That's why you now have super delegates and rig the system. If that's not a good old boy move, I don't know what is. But again, 1972, most of those people are dead. And there's people that weren't even born yet that are voters now. But only the white, wealthy people of all ages and white people born between 1964 and 1946, I know I reversed it, seem to matter to you. Because I don't know why, I've never been given a reason. It's just, in practice, that is my opinion. That is what I and others have observed. So why can't they fall in line for once? They've been getting their way since the 80s. We've never tried it our way. All we hear about is back in the 90s, Bill Clinton. Okay, or, look what happened with McGovern. Well, look what happened, when you want to talk history, look what happened with FDR. The kind of stuff we're talking about. They elected him 4 times, and the Republicans had to invent term limits in order to, not have someone like that in office for life again. Not to mention, you talk about bringing the coattails, over 80% of the Congress was Democratic. Whereas in your policy, yes, Bill Clinton won in 92. And what happened in 1994? Yeah, I thought so. No answer for that. So, I'm going to try to shut up because I like to just ramble on about some of this, and my INFJ rage is coming out a little bit. For people that stumbled across this, think it's interesting, and are like, who's this random nobody? Check out Secular Talk and Kyle Kalinske. He believes a lot of the same things politically as me, but his education's in politics, mine's in plant science and emergency medicine and firefighting. So this is forte. But go listen to him. He's an INFJ too. And he's better at this than me. He's been at it longer. But I'm prettier and I don't have any gray hair. Come on. I gotta have something on the guy. Alright. So, listen to these people that know what they're talking about. You have to change or you're going to continue to lose forever. And not just to think that I'm, like, if you think I'm some right-winger, I'm not. But, the right wing, they at least tell people what they are. And they're like, yeah, we like theocracy, and rich people are gods, and tax cuts for the rich. They're at least more open about what they for. And they make some points. They're hypocrites, too. Don't get me wrong. Because, Trump, a few things that I did agree with him on, like he railed against Wall Street and Goldman Sachs, but then made Steve Mnuchin his Treasury Secretary. So again, that was all bluster and bravado, just like his whole drain the swamp. And then he was like, I made friends with the swamp. Yeah, Trump got what he always wanted. I just wanted to be in the good old boys club, and now I'm in and people worship me. Believe me, tremendous, I'm the greatest. That's a problem in itself. But with the Democratic Party being so married to their DLC third way 90s platitudes, fake right-wing populists like Trump were able to rise to power because so many beaten down people were like, well, I know this screwed me in the 90s with NAFTA and all that. This guy's a bullshitter and a con artist, but maybe there's some chance, like I'll roll the dice. And that is how Trump won. Let's be honest. Was there like some shady shit going on? Was there sexism, racism, and all that? Yes. But the deciding factor was the Rust Belt states, which came down to tens of thousands of votes. And as Michael Moore said, the Rust Belt, that were lied to about the trickle down with Reagan and left behind by Democrats. And there were some people that, as much as they despised Trump, they're like, well, wait a minute. Barack Obama promised me change for 8 years and gave me more status quo. We elected him to be FDR 2.0. He won the 2008 primary as a black man with a Muslim name in a country with obvious racism because he was to the left of Hillary Clinton and she was seen as a continuation of the status quo. It was a common thing in the 2008 primaries. If you like the status quo, Hillary Clinton's your candidate. So Barack Obama won, and he was supposed to bring in this progressive change. We believed him. We gave him a supermajority, and then that didn't happen, and Citigroup picked his cabinet. So that's why people in the Rust Belt, some people that I know, rolled the dice on Trump because they knew what Hillary Clinton would be. Even though some thought that she'd be better than Trump, their lives were destroyed by NAFTA, and they said, quote, I can't vote for the wife of NAFTA boy. It's as simple as that. And Hillary, while she was running, granted, that's not, that's on Bill and not her. She didn't rail against NAFTA. She didn't rail against TPP, at least not until Bernie did, and Trump did rail against it. That's one of the few good points Trump had. He was kind of Ross Perot-y on trade. Ross Perot. And then he was just your standard, like, George W. Bush on everything else, which was terrible, plus racism and all his sexism and problems like that. Yeah. But Hillary could have pushed left. She didn't. She picked instead of courting the progressives, she picked a VP to the right of her who is against unions instead of a progressive. Why would you do? I mean, even Ronald Reagan, when he pushed the Republican Party so far to the right, even he knew, gee, I got to pick a moderate as my running mate to court moderates. And he picked George H.W. Bush, who came in second in that primary. Hillary didn't do that. We don't know why. Because she was, well, I know why. She was trying to court moderate Republicans, because apparently, the youth, minorities, progressives, they got nowhere to go. Fuck them. Yeah. Well, they just won't turn out, and you can shame us, but we'll be like, the hell with you. If you're not even willing to compromise with us, we're not giving in to your entitlement and your narcissism. And that's what it's become with those that are married to the status quo. It is a cult. It is a narcissistic cult. It is, nostalgic rose-colored glasses looking back at the 90s. It's no different, really, than the cult of personality that exists around Trump now. It's no different. You have to yield to the times, Sir John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada. So, or I'll give you one more relevant. Harry Truman, when the people are given a choice between a Republican and a Democrat who acts like a Republican, they'll pick the real Republican every time. We've seen that time and time again. He couldn't be more right, but we're just told fall in line and status quo. Nancy Pelosi gotta go. Yeah. And AOC's got to learn how to say no to the establishment. I know, AOC, you're in the NFJ, and that's hard as shit for you, but you can do it, I believe. So, listen to what we have to say. If you want to actually win and want real change, you have to give us a real seat at the table and at least come up with some more moderate, actual moderate. When I mean moderate, I mean like centrist in what the country believes and not the DC bubble, or, what the baby boomers want. I'm talking the majority of the country. Or you can keep losing because, saying that we're not as bad as the Republicans isn't a winning strategy. The Pied Piper strategy failed you in 2016. Look how bad he is. Biden barely won with a damn pandemic. Look how bad he is. You have to vote for me, kind of thing. And you got some shady shit going on in the primaries that have to stop. So that makes people not want to come out to vote either. Where it's like, gee, they're going to put their thumb on the scale for the good old boy to get the nomination. I'm not going to vote for him. What's the point? Yeah, they win either way. The establishment wins either way, because either the Republican will give them what they want, or the establishment Democrat will give them 90% of what they want at the end of the day. Take a lesson from countries like ours, like very close culturally to ours, mainly the United Kingdom and Canada. See what they do better. We're not automatically the best just because we're America. We do some things the best. Nobody makes better revolvers than us, but healthcare, we're 37th in the industrialized world, which is pretty pathetic. But again, the right people are getting rich, and that's really all that matters. And I've lived in Canada for years, so I do know that their universal healthcare system works. And having been an EMT since I was 17, I know a thing or two about emergency rooms and what goes on in there. But hey, don't listen to us boomers. Just remember, you're getting older, you're dying off, and you can't hold on forever. You want to keep screwing us over. Might not be too pleasant, though, that last stretch when, you can no longer cling on to power and subjugate other people anymore. I say it's time to pass the torch, and I think we're owed an explanation as to why that generation, and I mean this generation, I'm talking about the people in power, the people of that generation who were elected to positions of power, who had the ability to set policy. To be fair, is Hillary Clinton really responsible for Bill Clinton's record as president? No. Is she responsible for answering for her record in the Senate? Yeah. So, and we in the younger generations deserve to know why we are not given a voice, why we're not given a seat at the table, why the establishment refuses to even consider real change to make things better, and why they looted everything for themselves in the 80s and 90s and then call us entitled. I don't know. Just some questions to consider if you want to win, or if you actually give a damn about anybody born after 1964. I'll stop talking now. It's almost been a half hour. But to anyone who watches this, feel free to comment below if I'm wrong. But please tell me how I'm wrong. Do not just tell me I'm wrong because you don't want me to be right. That's not an argument. Give me, some facts and data. We can go back and forth. But you're not all, some of my videos like this, boomers tell me I'm wrong. But I'm not wrong just because I was born in 1987 and you were born in 1950. Again, why is it okay to have superiority based on what year you were born, regardless of merit, education, intelligence, work ethic, integrity, anything like that? It says, baby boomer automatically better. No, So, just wanted to put this video out there for anybody who stumbles across it. I know it's a bit of a rant, and for anybody semi-important who listen to this and think this guy's nuts, well, at least my one takeaway, and I said I'd say it again, and you can't tell me I'm wrong on this. It's not 1992 anymore. Stop acting like it.